Around the World in Web is part of the Silmarillion Writers Guild website that seeks to advance our objective of connecting with other groups that would be of interest to our members and our visitors. What we've created for our newly rebuilt website is a volunteer job called a scout, who is a person who helps us track down and share this information about events and resources that SWG members and visitors might be interested in. So there's really two types of scouts. Of course, scouts is volunteers who will post about anything of interest to the SWG that they find, are definitely people we're interested in having on board with our site. But if you run your own group and you're interested in becoming a scout just to post announcements for your own group or event, then that is also perfectly fine as well. We accept two types of content generally on Around the World in Web. We accept both announcements and links. So, announcements are about fandom events that would be relevant to Tolkien fans. So, this can be pretty much anything at all. Links, on the other hand, are content that would be of interest to members and visitors to the SWG. When our scouts are thinking about whether something is appropriate for our site, we ask them to keep in mind four different things. First of all, is inclusivity. This is a huge part of our mission in the SWG. We aim to be open to all Tolkien fans, and we want Around the World in Web to also reflect that. So we do not allow content that excludes fandom content, with some exceptions. So, first of all, there are times where there are fandom events that highlight contributions by members of fandom who belong to groups that have been traditionally marginalized within the fandom. So, for example, a zine that collects writing by fans of color would be an example of a project that highlights such a contribution. In those cases, those contributions are more than welcome and encouraged on our site. We also want to highlight the difference between celebration and exclusion. So there are necessarily events that seek to highlight or celebrate specific parts of fan works or specific types of fan works, and those are totally fine. So a challenge, for example, for a specific genre or a swap for a specific character or pairing, those celebrate those fan works. What we don't want is exclusion. So events or challenges that exclude genres, characters, pairings, etc. And here the language is really important. So if we said we were having an exchange for Het fan works about Maglor, that would again be a celebration of the specific Het genre. That same event, if it said it's about fan works about Maglor, but we do not want same-sex pairings in it, that would be exclusion, and that would not be okay for our site. We also have to be flexible around rules for adult content, because the reality is that many sites and web hosts used by fandom groups have rules around adult content, our web host included for the SWG. So adult content limiting adult content is fine as long as those limitations do not mirror the marginalization of real world people. To give an example of what I mean by that, if an event needs to say that it cannot feature content showing minors engaged in adult content, that's fine. But if that same event were to say same-sex relationships among minors would not be allowed, that would mirror that real world um, marginalization, and that would not be okay for our site. The second thing we ask to keep in mind is relevance. So even though we are the Silmarillion Writers Guild, we really accept for Around the World in Web anything that's of broad interest to Tolkien fans. So if it's about Lord of the Rings, if it's about The Hobbit, if it's about the films and upcoming TV show, then that content is fine, even if it's not Silmarillion related. Likewise, multi-fandom events and links are welcome as long as it's open or relevant to Tolkien fans. So, for example, a multi-fandom swap would be awesome. We encourage those to be posted, but that swap would need to accept Tolkien as a fandom. Would be fine. Credibility really relates to links, and we really want to emphasize that we don't expect our scouts to do fact checks. But some things that can tell you that you have a credible source is if your source identifies its sources, if it's avoiding loaded language, so language that's designed to provoke an emotional response in the reader, and if it avoids trying to convert readers to what we term the one true canon. So seeing canon through a single particular lens and arguing that that is superior to other ways to view or interpret the canon. That is something that we discourage on the SWG. Credibility should also include content that contributes to discussions. So more ephemeral content like memes is not necessarily appropriate for this part of our site. And finally, another important cornerstone of the SWG is civility. So civility is something that we expect. It's something that is a very important value to us. And so we're going to ask that no content be linked that is intended to be hurtful or to stoke drama. So if you are registered as a scout on our site, and in order to do so, you would just contact a moderator and we can add that permission. If you want to post an Around the World in Web announcement, you would begin with the My Account drop down here, and you'll see that you have the option to post an announcement. So if you click on that, that will take you to the post announcement page, which I have already filled out to show an example of an announcement that I'm going to post. You have some basic directions at the top here, including a link to this FAQ that you're on right now. If you need extra guidance on what to include here. Before starting, make sure that you check the existing Around the World in Web announcements here at the very top to make sure that your announcement or link has not already been posted. To start with, of course, we need a title. This is going to be the link on the sidebar and front page listings, as well as in the full announcement on the Around the World in Web page. So you want it to be as specific as you possibly can. So I chose Back to Middle-earth Month 2022 as mine. The next one down is your link. So here I have put in the Back to Middle-earth Month Dream With page. And so this is the main link that you want your visitors to end up on. So where you want your visitors to start. You will have space further on down the announcement form to add additional links. So I'm choosing the main B2MEM Dream With here. This is, if you look at your sidebar here with Around the World in Web, this is where that link will point here. If you hover over this, you see that this will actually take you off of the SWG site and to the link for the Around the World in Web item. And so that is where that link will go. This is an announcement, so I'm going to choose that. The summary field here should be a brief summary of the item. This is what will show on the sidebar and on the front page for Around the World in Web. It's really important to write this assuming that the person reading it knows nothing about the event or link that you're sharing. So you want to provide your key details here and make sure that you are, again, proceeding from that assumption that they've never heard of the event or link that you're talking about right now. So even though Back to Middle-earth Month has a very storied history with the SWG, then I'm going to assume that the person reading it has never heard of it before as I write my summary. So Back to Middle-earth Month is an annual fandom holiday that celebrates fan works about the world of J.R.R. Tolkien. Beginning on March 1, we invite you to join us for a daily creative prompt centered on the theme of renewal. This is just a made-up B2MEM that I did, by the way. So you notice that I explain what it is. I explain what we are looking for. We're looking specifically for fan works. I give you a date that we begin, March 1, and I tell you that we are doing a daily prompt challenge. Below the summary is your full announcement, and you can include as much or as little as you want in here. In some cases, you may just copy and paste the summary that you had above because there may not be a whole lot more information. But if you want to share additional information, here is the place. So you have access to links here. You have access to rich text, so you can format this with a lot more style and a lot more substance than your summary. So you'll notice that I provided some additional information, said that all Tolkien fans are welcome, all types of fan works are welcome, and I specify that that includes text and films, and then I include a list of links here where the visitor can find more information. Okay, your start date is the first date that the Around the World in Web announcement is going to appear on our site. So I chose today's date of May the 12th, and your end date is the day that you want it to come off of the sidebar on the front page. And I specify sidebar and front page because it will be archived. We have an Around the World in Web archive for past announcements for historical purposes. So it'll be moved at that point by the site automatically into the archive. Obviously, for if this was a real Back to Middle Earth month, then my start date would be March 1st, my end date would be March 31st. So sometimes your event itself suggests the ending date because it's the final day of the event. And that, of course, would be the date that you use. If it's something like an article or it's something a little more open-ended, just schedule it for about 2 weeks unless there's a reason to schedule it shorter or longer. But 2 weeks is a good general guideline there for start and end dates. Just some other general guidelines as far as Around the World in Web goes. Again, remember that we're trying to be as inclusive as possible of a variety of fans. This is fans who, may have a variety of different abilities and may use the web in different ways. And it's also fans with varying experience with Tolkien and the fandom around it. So when you're creating links, if we go back up here, you'll notice that my links themselves, the title of the link, the part that's in the blue underlined text, gives information about what that link is. What I am not doing is doing something like check it out here and turning the word here into a link. And the reason that I am not doing that is because if visitors with screen readers, when they are paging through the links, the screen reader reads to them what is in blue here. So as they're paging through, all they get is the word here. It doesn't tell them where that points. So you want to make sure that you're being specific so that screen readers can detect where they will be going, or that the users of the screen readers know if they want to click. So they will hear the word guidelines here, and they'll know if they want the Back to Middle Earth Month guidelines, then they will click there. Complete prompt list, same thing. It gives enough information for them to know if they want to click. When you're writing this information as well, make sure that you're avoiding any jargon that is specific to fandom that may not be understood by new fans or people who are less familiar with our fandom. So just make sure those things are fully spelled out. Again, assume that the person reading it knows little to nothing about the Tolkien fandom. So I have some examples on the written FAQ if you'd like to see more examples of what this might look like. So once I'm happy with my announcement, then all I need to do is click save here. And then my announcement is posted on the site. It will show up on the front page, it will show up on the sidebar, and it will show up on the Around the World in Web page as well. So to sum up, we're extremely appreciative of all of our volunteers who help make our site as awesome as it is and provide wonderful information and great resources for our members and our visitors. I always encourage in these videos giving information on how to use the various parts of the site for people not to overthink it. We're a group that's really strives in the core of our values to be welcoming and inclusive. If you are proceeding from those values, chances are what you are sharing here is going to be fine. If you have questions, you can always ask a moderator on the site for guidance. All you need to do is use the contact form that is here at the bottom of the site, and you can reach us at any time using that form, and we are happy to help you to decipher whether or not the link or the announcement you want to share is appropriate for the SWG. For anyone considering becoming a scout, thank you so much, and we really hope we see you scouting soon.